Overloaded trapezius muscles don't ask for stretching, they ask for systemic reorganization. This happens because the tension that returns after every massage, after every pause, after every attempt to let go is defensive intelligence. While you treat the symptom in isolation, the body learns to make the defense more sophisticated, redistributing protection in a more refined, quieter, and more persistent way. In the next few minutes, you're going to discover 3 concrete steps to dissolve this logic without manipulating the muscle, teaching the nervous system to stop demanding that the trapezius muscles hold the world at the top of the body. There is a mechanism operating behind this chronic overload that will only be revealed later, but it explains why the shoulders rise even at rest, why the neck stays rigid even after stretching, and why the breath shortens as if something were about to happen. If you leave this video now, you'll miss the exact moment when the body recognizes the new distribution of load and the shoulders drop out of sheer, unnecessary effort, without command and without strain. What keeps your trapezius muscles active is about to be undone. When the scapula loses its track over the rib cage, the body redistributes load to maintain cohesion. This has a name in the somatic field: sophisticated defense. The upper muscle takes on stabilization functions that aren't its job, entering a mode of permanent containment. The shoulders rise because someone has to hold the structure when global organization fails. This isn't rigid tissue out of stubbornness. It's an intelligent protective response that set in and was never undone. In Hermetic traditions, the body has always been understood as a self-organizing system, capable of redistributing weight to preserve integrity. When one part loses function, another compensates. The alchemists knew that chronic tension wasn't divine punishment, but internal reorganization in the face of chaos. The muscle that rises is doing exactly what the system ordered. It's saving the structure from collapse. The defense isn't the problem. The loss of organization that demands it is. Here is the mechanism. When the scapula loses the capacity to glide independently over the ribs, arm movements stop flowing through the bony surface and start pulling directly at the top of the shoulder. The upper muscle, which should stabilize in specific moments, starts working full-time, carrying weight that should be distributed across the entire posterior chain. The more you try to stretch this region, the more you teach the tissue to return quickly to the defensive position, because the body understands that letting go means losing containment. Polyvagal theory and studies of scapulothoracic mechanics revealed something unsettling. The nervous system prefers organized defense to chaotic openness. Stretching a defensive muscle often teaches the body to protect more efficiently, not to let go. The feeling of temporary relief that comes after a massage or a pause doesn't dissolve. The logic that keeps the overload active, it only silences the symptom for hours, while the nervous system recalibrates protection in a more refined, subtler, harder to track way. That's why the shoulders rise again, even after you've stretched, rested, breathed. The body didn't forget how to relax. It's doing exactly what it was trained to do over the years. Every time the compensation was treated in isolation, every time the symptom was manipulated without global reorganization, there is someone who lived through this exact cycle of sophisticated defense, trying to release the tension repeatedly only to see it return more persistent. The story of that person will illuminate how the defense takes hold and why it only dissolves when it stops being necessary. Anita was 42 years old, worked as an architect, and lived with her shoulders permanently elevated, as if she were holding up the ceiling of every project she coordinated. She woke up with a stiff neck, spent the day adjusting her posture in her office chair, and went to sleep with the feeling that something heavy was resting on the top of her body, something that never went down. even when she consciously tried to relax. Over the past 3 years, this overload had stopped being occasional discomfort and had become a constant presence, shaping even the way she breathed. Anita's routine included long meetings with clients, hours in front of the computer refining blueprints, and an internal demand to keep everything under control. She had already sought physical therapy, gone through chiropractic sessions, and tried weekly massages that brought relief for a few hours before the tension returned. Always subtler, always more established. She stretched her shoulders 3 times a day, took breaks to breathe deeply, used ergonomic cushions, but none of that prevented the body from returning to the same defensive position, as if there were an internal command stronger than any external technique. What Anita felt was not just muscular pain, it was the visceral sensation of being in constant readiness, as if the body were preparing for something that never happened. Her shoulders lifted on their own during difficult conversations, during tight deadlines, but also during moments of supposed rest, watching television, reading a book, lying in bed before sleep. Her breathing had shortened so much that she barely noticed it anymore, restricted to the top of the chest, never descending into the abdomen. This chronic vigilance affected her decisions. She avoided long commitments because she knew the pain would worsen, declined travel invitations because she feared spending entire days with her neck locked. It was during an appointment with an orthopedist, when he pointed to the X-ray and said there was nothing structurally wrong with her spine, that Anita finally understood that the problem wasn't in the bones, it was in how the body had learned to organize itself. The doctor mentioned a colleague who worked with somatic reorganization and had helped other patients with chronic tension that didn't respond to conventional treatments. 3 weeks later, when Anita walked into that therapist's office and heard for the first time that her trapezius muscles weren't tense out of stubbornness, but because they were taking on a function that wasn't theirs, something inside her recognized the truth of it. The therapist explained that as long as she tried to release the muscle without reorganizing the system underneath, the body would continue to demand that it hold things up, and that there was a path to restore track to the scapulae and teach the body to redistribute load without vigilance. In the first session, lying on the floor with her knees bent and her hands behind her neck, Anita was guided to allow the back of her ribcage to descend toward the ground, expanding backward in a way she had never experienced before. For the first time in years, she felt warmth between the shoulder blades, a sense of support along her back that simply hadn't existed before. When the therapist asked her to let her elbows fall to the sides while maintaining that posterior expansion, Anita noticed something disturbing and liberating at the same time. Her shoulders dropped on their own, without command, without effort, out of pure lack of necessity. What Anita began to feel in that moment, you are about to experience now in your own body. The first step is to recognize when the trapezius steps in to save the movement, the exact instant when compensation happens. Stand upright, spine neutral, arms resting alongside the body. Slowly raise your arms forward, as if reaching for something at eye level. Pay attention. There is a moment, usually when the arms reach chest height, when the shoulders rise along with them. That is the moment of active compensation. What should be the independent glide of the scapula over the ribs turns into a single movement, as if shoulder and arm were glued into a rigid block that lifts as one. Repeat this movement 3 times, slowly, tracking the exact point where the shoulders begin to rise. Don't try to correct it yet, just notice. This happens because the scapula has lost its track. It can no longer glide smoothly over the rib cage, so the upper muscle takes on the stabilization role that isn't its job. It enters a mode of permanent containment, holding weight that should be distributed across the entire posterior chain. The more you try to stretch this area without reorganizing the system underneath, the more you teach the body to snap back quickly into the defensive position, because letting go without organization means losing containment. The second step restores organization to the back of the rib cage. Lie down on the floor, knees bent, feet grounded, hands behind the neck with the fingers interlaced. Allow the weight of the head to rest into the hands without forcing. From this position, you will guide a microthoracic extension. This is not arching the back. It is allowing the posterior ribs to descend toward the floor while the rib cage expands backward. Imagine the back widening, creating a surface of support that did not exist before. Take a deep breath while maintaining this posterior expansion. Don't force the breath downward. Just allow it to descend naturally as the back gains space. You will begin to feel warmth between the shoulder blades, a sense of support in the middle of the back that you may never have noticed before. If the breath starts to descend into the abdomen without effort, it means the rib cage is regaining mobility. Stay in this position for 5 long breaths, allowing the back to expand with each cycle, without haste, without excessive control. Maintaining the posterior expansion, let the elbows slowly fall to the sides, as if they were being pulled by gravity. Don't force the opening, just allow it. As the elbows descend, the scapulae begin to glide over the surface of support, and here is the critical point. You will feel the shoulders descending as well, not because you told them to, but because the need for support has diminished. When the rib cage offers a stable base and the scapulae regain their track, the muscle can finally stop working full time. If the shoulders don't descend immediately, don't force it. Maintain the posterior expansion, breathe slowly, and allow the weight of the head to continue resting in the hands. Sometimes the body needs a few breathing cycles to recognize that the defense is no longer necessary. When you feel the shoulders softening, even subtly, that indicates the nervous system has begun to recalibrate load distribution. Repeat this sequence 2 more times. Expand the back, let the elbows fall, feel the scapulae gliding, and the shoulders descending out of sheer lack of necessity. Before moving on to the third step, there is something essential about what happened to Anita after that first session, something that will illuminate what is beginning to reorganize in your body right now. In the days following that initial practice, Anita noticed that her shoulders remained relaxed even in situations of pressure. During a tense meeting with a client, she realized that her breath continued descending into the abdomen, that her neck didn't lock automatically, that her shoulders didn't rise into alert mode the way they always had. For the first time in years, the sensation of being in constant readiness began to dissolve, not because she consciously relaxed, but because the body stopped demanding permanent containment at the top of the structure. The transformation wasn't only physical. Anita began accepting commitments she used to decline, traveled to visit her sister without fearing a weekend with a locked neck, and returned to sleeping without waking up stiff. What changed wasn't the amount of work or responsibility, it was how the body distributed their weight. The scapulae had regained their track, the ribcage offered stable posterior support, and the upper muscle could finally stop compensating. The defense dissolved because it was no longer necessary, exactly as it is beginning to happen with you now. What Anita felt, shoulders that descend out of lack of necessity, breathing that descends without technique, a neck that regains spontaneous mobility is what is installing itself in your body at this moment. The reorganization that began while you were lying on the floor continues operating as you read these words. The third step will integrate this new distribution of load into functional movement. Stand up slowly, spine neutral, arms resting alongside the body, Before moving anything, bring awareness to the back. Feel whether the posterior expansion you created on the floor is still present, even if only subtly. Raise your arms forward again, but this time keep the rib cage expanded posteriorly and the scapulae with their track restored. Pay attention, the arms will lift without the shoulders following, as if there were internal space that did not exist before. If the shoulders try to rise along with the movement, stop, take a deep breath, allowing the back to expand backward, and begin again. The goal here is not to force the shoulders down, it is to teach the body not to recruit defense while moving. Repeat the arm lift 3 times, always tracking whether the upper muscle remains inactive or tries to reclaim containment. Each repetition is an opportunity to reinforce the new organization. The body learns through conscious repetition, not verbal command. Vary the movement. Lift the arms laterally, as if opening wings. Same instruction, keep the back expanded, the scapulae gliding, the shoulders without recruiting defense. Then perform a slow trunk rotation to the right and to the left, observing whether the top of the body remains relaxed while you turn. If you feel tension returning, stop, expand the back again, breathe, and continue. The practice is not about executing movements perfectly, it is about reorganizing the logic that kept the overload active. The 3 steps integrate: recognizing when compensation happens, restoring organization to the back and the scapulae, reintegrating movement without defense. These are not isolated exercises, they are layers of the same global reorganization. When the rib cage offers a base, when the scapulae regain their track, when movement flows without compensation, the upper muscle finally stops sustaining what is not its function. The defense dissolves because the system no longer needs it, and this is the only form of relief that lasts. The physical marker that reorganization has occurred is in the breath descending into the abdomen without effort, in the warmth that remains between the scapulae, and in the shoulders resting without vigilance. If you notice that the back has gained amplitude, that the neck is no longer rigid, that the sensation of holding the world at the top of the body has diminished, this means the defense has begun to dissolve. This is not temporary relief, it is load redistribution that has settled into the system. To anchor this new state, use a simple gesture. Place the fingertips at the base of the skull, where the occipital bone meets the muscles of the neck. While maintaining this light touch, allow the rib cage to expand backward, as you did on the floor, and take 3 deep breaths. This gesture takes 30 seconds, can be done discreetly anywhere, and works as a somatic reminder that the body knows how to redistribute load when it receives the correct signal. When you feel the shoulders rising again over the next few days, and this may happen, pause whatever you are doing. Place the fingers at the base of the skull, allow the back to expand backward, and repeat internally. The effort distributes, it does not concentrate. Stay in this position for 3 long breaths, feeling the scapulae regain their track again, until the shoulders descend out of lack of necessity. This protocol transforms the practice into a portable tool, something you can access whenever the old pattern tries to reinstall itself. The reorganization is sealed, and what comes next is the understanding of what this means beyond the practice. You hold in your body the understanding that true relief does not come from releasing what is tense, but from dissolving the need for tension, and this changes how you move, breathe, and inhabit space. The shoulders that dropped did not come down by command. They dropped because the system stopped demanding that they hold everything. The breath that descends into the abdomen without effort, the neck that regained spontaneous mobility, the back that offers support where there was once emptiness. These changes are not fleeting sensations. They are signs that sophisticated defense has begun to unravel because it is no longer necessary. This reorganization is a gateway to deeper layers. When the body stops living in constant readiness, other defenses begin to reveal themselves. Tensions you didn't even know you were carrying. Compensations operating in silence. Patterns that shaped decisions without your awareness. The journey of release gains new territory each time a defense dissolves. And what you experienced here is only the beginning of a more conscious relationship with the somatic intelligence that has always been operating within you. Peter Levine wrote, "Trauma is frozen energy that dissolves when the body regains internal organization." What you did today was exactly that, restoring organization to the system, allowing trapped energy to begin flowing again, teaching the body that it does not need to protect itself in order to exist. The body's capacity to self-organize when given the right conditions is a reflection of the divine intelligence that permeates all creation. God is not outside the body. God is in the very mechanics of life, rebalancing itself, in the cellular wisdom that knows how to redistribute load when the threat ends. If this content resonated with you, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Share this with someone who also lives with permanently elevated shoulders, holding the world at the top of the body. Consider becoming a channel member. This allows us to continue bringing somatic reorganization, practices with this level of depth, and to reach more people who need this knowledge. Write in the comments, "I dissolved the defense and my trapezius muscles stopped containing." Declaring this anchors the new distribution of load in consciousness and in the nervous system, externally marking the internal transformation that took place in your tissue. There are other layers of defense waiting to be dissolved, other compensations that have shaped your body over the years, and that can be reorganized with the same precision you just experienced. To continue this journey of somatic reorganization, click the video appearing on the screen. When the body learns that it does not need to protect itself in order to exist, it finally rests, and in that rest, presence settles.